Hi, I'm Wesley Ferreira, clarinet professor at Colorado State University, and today I'm going to discuss how to prepare this year's Colorado All-State Band Audition. In this video, Rose Etude number 21 will be our focus. This etude is composed in the key of A major, and you'll notice a number of accidentals scattered throughout, as well as what appears to be a cadenza halfway through. It's marked andante cantabile, with an added dolce character indication in the first measure, all suggesting that the etude is to be played at a moderate walking tempo, sweetly, and in a singing style. Keep this in mind and practice with these characteristics during your entire preparation process. As with all of your clarinet playing, using good practice techniques will be the key to learning this etude properly and doing your best come audition day. Let's go over some important and basic concepts to keep in mind when preparing this etude. Subdividing. For many, the opening two measures presents a possible first obstacle. Make sure to keep a steady eighth note subdivision going from the outset. This will prevent you from rushing throughout the rest of the etude. While breathing and musicality will allow for stretching of the pulse, the eighth note subdivision should be kept relatively even. Some of you may find that using a 16th note subdivision throughout is more beneficial, and depending on the passage, there's an option to switch back and forth between both. Let's take a look at those opening measures while I demonstrate. With my metronome on, and mind you, at a slower marking than my final tempo, I will make every note in the first measure sound an eighth note. This requires that I turn the opening dotted quarter note into 3/8. I've made my metronome beat eighth notes as a guide. Because of the double dotted quarter note, G sharp, in the second measure, I will switch my subdivision into 16th notes so that I know exactly where to place the F sharp in rhythm. You may use this technique whenever suitable throughout the etude. As a general rule, your subdivision of any long note is determined by the note value of the following note. Performing this etude in character is going to be another very important aspect of your performance. Use continuous air support, light fingers, and play with your very best tone to achieve the dolce characteristic. I always tell my students that to play with continuous air support means that your air is always moving out of you, down the tube of your clarinet, and out the bell. Achieving the dolce characteristic in this etude also means that your breaths need to be silent, and any articulation should be played legato. This includes the 4 16th notes at the end of measure 12 and 14. The marking of staccato articulations underneath a slur often means that the composer would like length on those notes. Finally, your tempo should be an andante, which loosely translates into a moderately slow walking tempo. I might suggest a minimum tempo for andante at 69 quarter beats per minute. Your choice of fingerings also needs to support the style. In measures 5 and 6, use the alternate fingering for F sharp to avoid flipping and sounding any extra notes between F sharp and E sharp. In measure 7, play B natural on the right side of the clarinet so that you can more easily move to the G sharp. And play C sharp on the left side in order to connect easily to the D sharp. The fork fingering for S sharp should also be used in measure 14. Now there are 2 measures in this etude where an advanced rolling technique will allow for a smoother connection between notes, keeping with the dolce character. In measure 5 and again in measure 14. A smooth connection between the notes in the clarion register to those in the altissimo register requires that you roll off your left hand index finger. I'll demonstrate the difference in measure 5, first with no roll off, followed by an example with rolling off. This rolling off technique may not come easy for some of you. Keep your air moving. This will help. And as with everything, patient practice will allow you to achieve success. Now, a final word about style. To achieve the cantabile or singing style, you should perform with a sense of playing outward. Continuous air support, the type that I spoke about earlier, is key, and use the dynamic indications to your advantage. Though there is no dynamic marking in the opening, playing at a piano dynamic level is appropriate. This will allow you to come up in volume in measures 5 and 6, and will contrast nicely in measure 9 with the marked mezzo forte. I'll remind you, though, that P in piano does not stand for puny. Your opening piano dynamic should be sweet, yes, but not weak, not too quiet. Again, continuous air support is your friend. I always tell my students that you want to hear the piano dynamic sound across the room, not a piano dynamic that you can hear right next to your ear. Before I demonstrate the portion of the etude required for the All-State Band audition this year, a word about the cadenza. As with all cadenzas, you want to make it sound as if you were in complete control of the music. I find that students often rush through cadenzas, not taking enough time on long-held notes, not taking enough time to pause and let the music breathe. Because cadenzas tend not to be tied to a continuous rhythmic pulse, there is a balance that you need to strike between the written note values and your imagination. In this cadenza, feel free to hold the notes under the fermatos longer than you might otherwise feel comfortable, and you might consider adding a slight ritardando going into the low E. I'm going to take some time after the E to make sure that I get a good breath before starting the chromatic scale. I've decided not to take a breath after the last fermata note C so that I can play straight into the next figure. I do think that it's important to play measure 17 in the original tempo, since the cadenza likely ends there. It's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts on this etude. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me anytime. I hope to see all of you at the All-State Band weekend this year, and even at the various honor bands in our state, many that use this same etude. Good luck with your auditions.